All right, all this good news this year, and the so-called mainstream media, we call them the so-called mainstream media because they're really mostly the left-wing media, is still trying to figure out why the president is popular with his base. We're going to take a closer look next. Well, it's a good time to be an American. The economy is humming, Wall Street is booming, and the biggest tax cut in 30 years is on the way. But the so-called mainstream media still can't figure out why President Trump is so popular with the base that elected him. So the Associated Press, AP, that news service, sent a reporter on a field trip to Trump country. But Claire Galafaro came back from Sandy Hook, Kentucky, as mystified as ever by Trump supporters. She couldn't explain why, that, quote, despite the president's dismal approval ratings and lethargic legislative achievements, he remains profoundly popular here in these here mountains. Well, maybe our guest can help her understand. Joining us now is Tim Graham, Director of Media Analysis at the Media Research Center. So when I looked at this article, and the heart of Trump country, you get 9 paragraphs in, and you're already talking about nostalgia, dismal approval ratings, lethargic legislative achievements, Trump's white base, ceaseless Twitter taunts. Why can they not resist impugning the very people who sent this man to the White House?
They think this is truth-telling. They think that when they say that Trump basically has no legislative achievements and he failed to repeal Obamacare, they're going to ignore the tax cut somehow. They're going to ignore the stock market somehow. She mentions it around the edges. They're going to somehow, suggest that Obamacare wasn't repealed, although they got rid of the individual mandate, which is the most offensive part of Obamacare. But look, when it comes down to it, you send these people to Kentucky, and the whole method here is to say, why haven't you people changed your minds yet? We've been working on this man since 2015, and you're still standing with him, and it makes them angry and frustrated.
It really
end up with a story like this.
No, it's a great point. So Claire Galafaro, you do a little meandering on her Twitter feed. Again, she's a reporter at the AP, which is supposed to be a news service, supposed to play it straight down the line. One of her tweets from August 13th of 2017 says, the old saying, when you dance with the devil doesn't change, the devil changes you. She's referring to President Trump. Listen, when I stand up and talk, I'll come out right and say it. I'm a conservative. This is where I'm coming from. This is what I believe. Why do reporters still think they can hide behind a veil of being unbiased, behind AP, and then present something like this with such bias and think that people will just buy it?
And the Twitter pages make this more obvious than ever. It's really easy to say, this is an obnoxious story by this AP reporter. I bet if I go to her Twitter page,
it's as
you're
easy
going
as
to
that.
find more of the same.
I know. I mean, it never fails. Every time I go to that Twitter feed and I say, maybe I'm going to find just a lock, stock, and barrel conservative here. And every time it's usually an East Coast liberal that's living in a bubble, takes a flight to Kentucky, goes to the zoo and meets some Trump supporters, writes up something condescending, and then wonders how in the world is this guy going to get elected again?
And they actually understand what's going on here. They understand that coal state voters want coal to come back. They understand that people in rural Kentucky are not fond of let's make sure there are 7 different forms of transgender public bathrooms in every school. They know why these people don't stand with the Democrats, but they're just going to ignore it all.
They ignore the policies and go to the personal politics of destruction, no doubt. Well, what the media also can't stand is the fact that this president uses his Twitter feed and social media effectively to change the entire conversation. Well, former President Obama had a little something to say recently about social media and a veiled reference to President Trump. Take a listen.
People can have entirely different realities. They can be just cocooned in information that reinforces their current biases. The truth is that on the internet, everything is simplified. And when you meet people face to face, it turns out they're complicated. And you find areas of common ground because you see that things aren't as simple as have been portrayed in whatever chat room you've been in. And it's also, by the way, harder to be as obnoxious and cruel in person.
This, of course, coming in a hard-hitting interview with Prince Harry. He also said he wants to recreate a common space on the internet. It almost sounds like President Obama wants to find a way to create a safe space for the way things used to be, where the old guard protected the information that made it to people, whereas now we can get our information from wherever we want.
Yeah, and they do hate that. They hate social media because it's where people go around the mainstream media, go around the liberal politicians. They can't stand that. But, you know, the phoniest thing a liberal will say, and you see this a lot, you know, we really resent these ideological cocoons. You know, how many interviews did Barack Obama give to Fox News once he became president? I bet you it averaged less than one a year.
Maybe one at the Super Bowl. Yeah, I can't recall many. Yeah. No, it's true. I mean, the history department at Princeton University, where I went to school, had one registered Republican and 36 Democrats. I bet if you went to the failing New York Times around the corner here, you probably aren't going to find many registered Republicans. Why can't they look internally and say, wait, maybe we live in a cocoon too?
Absolutely. John Corey wrote a book about how he was the only guy inside the New York Times that voted for Ronald Reagan, and that's obviously still true.
Well, and they hate this president even more than they hated Ronald Reagan. Tim Graham, thanks a lot for the insight. Appreciate it.
You bet.
All right. One unpleasant trend over